First of all, good morning. Nia, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And do the, we'll go ahead and do the roll call.
Do we have Alan Schutz on? Ames Barnett,
Present.
thank you. Bart Gobill,
Present.
thank you. Governor Brian Kemp. Buddy Harden. Candace Brose. Kayana Good. Chris Tobiasen,
I'm present.
thank you. Chris Wells. Del Keith. Downing Barber. Emily Davidson,
Present.
thank you. Eric Hughes. Evelyn Olenek,
Present.
thank you. Frank Ginn. Chunk Newman. Greg Dozier. Thank you. James Wilburn,
Present.
thank you. Jay Cunningham.
Jay is
Gerald.
present.
Thank you. Gerald Mitchell,
Present.
thank you. Joe Yarborough,
Joe's present.
thank you. Karen Vieira, thank you. Kelly Brownlow. Kevin Jackson Jr. Logan Leslie,
Present.
thank you. Mark Butler. Mike Long. Patricia Ross. Phil Sutton. Randy Beal. Trey Taylor,
Yeah, Trey is present.
thank you. Sam Dasher. Sam McCurchin,
Sam McCatron's present.
thank you. Stuart Countess, thank you. Susan Andrews, thank you. Teresa Fisher,
Teresa's present.
thank you. Tom Cook,
Present.
thank you. Tyrone Oliver, thank you. And Wendell Dallas,
Present.
thank you. We're at quorum, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Nia. Well, folks, again, thanks for being here. And for those that are on Zoom with us, thank you for participating through Zoom. Before we jump right into just, I do have a few announcements. I do want to personally thank Stuart and his team for hosting today's meeting, and really just, this is a great facility and you have a great team, and we're really appreciative of you. While you're serving on the board, serving Georgia, you're also being a wonderful, gracious host. So thank you very much for hosting today. And I'm sure your job doesn't keep you very busy anymore now since you're the CEO. So, but again, we very much appreciate it. I'm going to announce a few staff changes just for everyone to know. Gerald Sidner joined the compliance team as a compliance specialist. The programs team has added Deneen Woodson as the programs manager and Jaleesa Martin as a programs specialist. Brandy Logan has been promoted to the senior program specialist, and Bianca Howard joined the business services team as a business services specialist. Sylvester Stokes, grant specialist, accepted a grant management position with the federal agency and is no longer with OWD. And this last one here, I'm struggling with a little bit. Stephen Wilson, our data information director, has accepted a position with an outside agency, and his last day with OWD is May 31st. And Stephen, I know all these different changes, and I've seen a lot of changes throughout my privilege of being able to serve on this board, and we're greatly going to miss you, Stephen. So congratulations. All right, friends, you received in the packet for the information for this meeting, the agenda and the minutes from the last meeting. And so do we have a motion on the floor to approve the agenda for today's meeting?
This is James Wilburn. Make a motion to approve.
All right, Dr. Wilburn, thank you.
Ames Barnett makes a second to approve.
Thank you, Ames. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. We also have the minutes from our February 17th, 2022 meeting. We have a motion on the floor to approve those.
Chris Tobias in motion.
Thank you.
Sam McCatcheron, second.
All right, great. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next up, we're going to jump right into our committee reports. And first up is going to be the Adult and Dislocated Worker Committee. Chairwoman Karen Vieira, as the Chief People Officer of Church's Chicken, will give us a brief update. And do we have the mic? Is it already on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Adult and Dislocated Workers Committee convened on Wednesday, May 11th. We had a very robust meeting, but we did not have quorum. Ms. Melanie Napolitano, sorry, our strategic population specialist, presented an update to state policy 3.2.5 on the adult basic skills definition. Ms. Rosani Rios will be presenting this policy change in a few minutes. If accepted, this change would include English language learners in the basic skills definition and highlight their status as a priority population for Title I of the adult program. Ms. Ada Jones and Ms. Lorena Beltran of WorkSource Cobb presented the English language learner initiative that they are working on. The initiative was created to foster and support partner relationships and to maximize resources in the community through advocacy, education, and networking for those who speak English as a second language. The resources include social services, mentoring, training, and education. In addition to that, we had another presentation from WorkSource Macon Bibb, Tiffany Andrews, the director, and Daryl Stillings, the director of WorkSource Middle Georgia, on a presentation that they're working on a joint IWT program with Buzzell Plumbing. I would like to comment that the WorkSource Macon Bibb and WorkSource Middle Georgia have come together to present joint offerings and joint training programs for OJT and IWT. Right now, their program has a seamless enrollment for both the employees and residents of Region 6. And their initiative is proving to be successful. They have 7 participants in the program to this date. We went on to a presentation by Brandon Ona and Bianca Howard, our OWD Business Services Specialists, on the Sector Partner Grant. This is a 2022 Sector Partner Grant. The aim is to strengthen and reorient the partnerships maybe that we kind of lost touch with over the pandemic period. I think this is a great post-pandemic opportunity to identify potential challenges. The program components and the emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion, employer engagement, the data, understanding the data, what are the accessible pathways, and what are the special population needs. So that's an exciting opportunity, I think, for us to re-engage with our businesses out there, understand what's going on, and just really see what's changed over this pandemic period. Moving on, like I said, we had a robust meeting. Robin Roberts from WorkSource Academy coordinator gave a presentation on the recent WorkSource Georgia Academy Spring 2022 conference featuring 36 sessions and over 45 speakers. The top topics included disability awareness, serving English language learners, employment network, and more. The Academy was there's a new session called Birds of a Feather, which was something different. They allowed the attendees to meet with each other and strategize on areas of expertise and brainstorm. And they ended that session with a very nice video that just kind of gave us, Rosani was in there with her marshmallows, and we got to see a little bit of the conference, and it was delightful to get a glimpse of the conference and the work that everyone had put into it. It looked like it was very successful. So this includes the committee report. I'll turn it over to Ms. Rios to present the proposed changes. Again, that's state policy 3.2.5.
Can they hear you on Zoom as well, or do they need the microphone for? You don't look formal at all up there, standing up there behind that sill right there, and between those flags. No, it doesn't look formal at all. You're
Good morning. It's so nice to be able to present and see people's faces, right? This proposed policy change is a very straightforward policy change. It's just saying that those individuals, adults that are English language learners by statute, they are considered basic skills deficient. And why are we adding this language to our policy? Because those that are basic skills deficient, they have priority of service within our regulations. That means that they have priority of adult funding. And we want to make sure that our local areas have the guidance so they can, whenever they're serving English language learners, they know the priority that that represent. So that's the proposed policy change. Any questions about it?
I just did want to make one comment that Dr. Good had brought up some issues or some suggestions to look at the policy. And I believe what the plan was that we were going to add this now, but have that as a takeaway to come back with some additional potential revisions.
Yes, we already have an internal meeting established, and we're gonna have some conversations about it and review the information that Dr. Good brought up.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Any questions for Madam Rios? You look like a president up there, very much so. Excellent. So do we have a motion? Do we have an action item we need to take here? So do we have a motion to?
This is Ames. I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
And Dr. Andrews is seconding the motion there. So, any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign? Motion carried. You're testing us with that ringing, right? Is that, I'm just picking on you. Okay, so Chairwoman Vieira, is there anything else for your report for your committee? Thank you very much. Let's move now on to our next committee update on the Youth Committee. Chairwoman, Dr. Andrews, Commissioner Andrews, who's the Vice Chairman of the Harris County Board of Commissioners. She'll give a brief update.
Thank you, Chairman. Our committee met on the 10th, and we did have a quorum, and we too heard from Cobb local area workforce, but Karen has already given that report. So I'll go to our second update, which was from the Georgia Mountains area. Ebony Tucker talked to us about a program that gets people in the door to work. It's a boot camp kind of program. It provides workforce training that leads to a certification, but it's a short-term program. She explained that all of the trainings provided through this program lead to an industry recognized credential and range from 4 to 11 weeks in duration. The trainings are available to both youth and adult participants. They are entry-level positions. They are designed to be a first step to get the participant employed as quickly as possible. Ms. Tucker explained the supportive services that are available to participants, including transportation and childcare. And Ms. Tucker provided the details on the following trainings: electromechanical, refrigeration academy, a welding boot camp, construction ready, medical assistant certification at the Medical Institute of Northeast Georgia, and employability skills master class. So that was encouraging to hear that we weren't waiting for people to complete a certification program. They could go ahead and get these in the door skills and go to work and then continue to work on their certification. We also heard about the conference and what a great conference it was. And we did have a quorum, and we have 2 policy items to bring before the committee of the whole. The first one is the youth basic skills deficient definition. This is exactly like the one that Rosani Rios just presented to you about adults, but this is in the youth committee to clarify that by statute, English language learners are basic skills deficient and therefore qualify for priority of service. So that's one of our policy committees, and I'll go to the next one and then I'll recommend them all to you, Chairman, for one vote, if you don't mind. I think we can do it that way. The next policy is 3.4.2, ITAs for youth. And this policy change would clarify that ITAs for in-school youth are an allowable service. However, the youth would need to be co-enrolled with the adult program, and the money for the ITA would need to come from the adult program. And so, Brittany, do you have any additional information you'd like to present about that policy? No additional information.
Yes, you've got to go up to the podium.
Sorry, gotta be formal. No, Dr. Andrews summed that up pretty well. This is just guidance that we're reiterating from federal guidance to make sure that local areas know they can use this option to co-enroll in school youth as adults, but they need to use that adult funding for ITAs. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Any questions?
So the youth committee recommends approval of 3.2.6 youth basic skills deficient definition and 3.4.2 ITAs for youth.
Great. So is that a motion, Commissioner
Yes, I'll
Andrews?
make that in the form of a motion.
All right. Do we have a second? Karen Vieira seconds. All right. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Like sign. Motion carries. Motion carries. Commissioner Andrews, any other items? That's it. Thank you very much. Next up, we have the Finance and Performance Committee, Co-Chairman Dr. James Wilburn, who's a Director for Military Academic Programs for Georgia Tech Professional Education. Will take the lead to provide this update, and our Co-Chair, Ames Barnett, is also on. He may provide support, but Dr. Wilburn, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you and good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Finance and Performance Committee met on May 10th. We did have a quorum and had a productive conversation regarding updates and changes to policy 2.2.7, which is the Governor's Reserve Fund, and 2.2.15, which is the transfer policy. These changes were also presented to and approved by the Executive Committee on March 9th earlier this year. The details of the changes are as follows. So for policy 2.2.7, there was added language to clarify that funding in the Governor's Reserve may be purposed to fund strategic discretionary and/or incentive grants and made available to local providers. And the changes to policy 2.2.15, there was added language to align the policy with OWD transfer processes and timelines. There was also added language that mirrors policy 2.2.7 to clarify that funding in the Governor's Reserve may be purposed to fund strategic discretionary and/or incentive grants and made available to local providers. And I'll turn it over at this time to Serena Walker to provide any additional details on the policy changes if needed. Serena?
Any questions?
Okay.
So she got the mic, didn't have to go on the platform. I like that. Oh, excellent, excellent. So any questions for Dr. Walker? All right. No questions, Dr. Wilburn.
Okay, great. Well, if there are no questions, then the Finance and Performance Committee makes a motion to approve changes to policy 2.2.7 and 2.2.15 as discussed.
All right, do we have a second? Commissioner Dozier is a second. All right, any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. All right, motion carries. Dr. Wilburn, any other items or aims? Barnett?
None from Dr. Wilburn. Ames, you have anything?
Yeah, I have nothing to comment. It's hard to follow up behind Dr. Wilburn, but he's got it under control. So I have nothing to say.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up, we have the Executive Committee, and there's a couple items that we're going to be voting on here today. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Kristen Barhoven.
Okay, so the first item that we're taking a look at is our recapture. This is not a policy, it's just an action item that we ask the board to consider every year. Just as a little overview, as a state, we get federal funds for a 3-year period. We disperse 85% of adult and youth funds, and then anywhere from 60 to 80% of dislocated worker funds directly to our local areas. Local areas get the funds for 2 years. And so in that 3rd year, it becomes state funds. And if it's not spent, we get to you as a board get to decide what to do with that. During the first 2 years, the local areas have to completely spend after the 2nd year. The first year, there is federal guidance to spend or obligate 80% of that funding. And if a local area does not spend or obligate 80% of that funding, you as a board have the option to complete a process that's called recapture, where we would recapture those funds and allocate it out to local areas who have met spending requirements. We discussed this a little bit, not at the last executive committee meeting, but the executive committee meeting before that. I think the discussion at that point was that we would complete the recapture process this year, but there was a little hesitancy from the board and just wanting to see if we could maybe do it on a case-by-case basis. After some research, while the board does have the option to complete the recapture process, once we undergo that process, we don't have a lot of flexibility in how we do it. The law very specifically says how money has to be reallocated. So based on that, some additional feedback from local areas, and I'll do a presentation later on the budget where you'll be able to see cuts. It just looks like it's going to be more feasible to allow local areas to carry over more than 20% because they're taking another very large cut. We get allocated money 3 times a year from the federal government. Our first allocation was supposed to be April 1. We still have not seen that allocation. So just the timeliness of when they receive money can be very up in the air depending on the year, depending with what's going on in Congress. And so the recommendation from OWD is that we do allow local areas to carry over more. Again, this doesn't change anything with 2nd or 3rd year funding. Those funds still have to be spent down by a very specific time frame, but it allows them to have a little more flexibility in their budget, especially over the summer months. Are there any questions? So our recommendation is that we waive the recapture process for 1st year funds for local areas.
Okay, do we need to vote on this separately right now?
Yes, sir.
All right, so do I need a motion?
Yes, sir.
From the floor? did you get, who wants to go first? Okay, all right, great. So we have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. All right, motion carries. And Kristen and team, thank you all for the work on it. I know y'all work very closely with the directors and chairs throughout Georgia, and we appreciate the work and
Thank you.
being smart, practical at how we do this.
We appreciate the board always allowing us the flexibility to relieve the pressure points that we can relieve. Can't always do all of them.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, the second thing, I've got two bylaw changes. The first bylaw change, if you have looked at your board paperwork at all recently, the majority of our board members are actually rolling off in, I think, a matter of 2 weeks, Nia? 2 days. So the governor's office, just due to the sheer size of our board, sometimes it can take some time to get that many appointments through. So essentially the paperwork on the governor's side and how their executive appointments office works is that if a new seat has not been reappointed or the governor does not make any action on that seat, they consider the individuals to still serve until there's any action. So legally how their executive office works and what that says in statute does cover us, but just because it is a federal board, we wanted to make sure that that language was mirrored within our bylaws. So that's the first bylaw change, just to ensure that seated members will continue serving at the governor's pleasure until the Office of Executive Appointments makes any action on that. And we are working with them and hope to have some work on that soon. The second bylaw change is just establishing a little bit more of an order of succession. So we have a chair and a vice chair, but our bylaws are silent to, if either one of those individuals are not at either a full board meeting or an executive committee meeting, we don't talk about who leads the meeting then. So this is just establishing that the chair can appoint any member of the business community to lead that meeting. And why we've chosen a member of the business community is because the chair himself has to be a business community, a member of the business community. And so those are the two bylaw changes that we're proposing. Any questions?
Okay, are there any questions?
Mr.
Right,
Chairman,
so
it's
we,
Trey Taylor.
Yes.
The only observation that I would make is a previous board that I was on was in a similar situation where board members were considered to still be there even though they didn't attend, and sort of had rolled off, and it created quorum problems for us. So it's just something I want to pipe up and say, hey, there may be quorum problems because you have to, I guess, you have to have a percentage of active appointed members rather than, people that show up. So I just wanted to point that out as a troubling part of a previous board that I had sat on.
Yes, sir. I think that's a very keen observation. And we are working with the Governor's Office of Executive Appointments to try to remedy that as soon as possible, but we'll definitely do what we need to do on our end to communicate to members that they are still considered members until that point of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Trey. Any other questions or comments? All right, so we need a motion to
Yes, sir.
approve. All right.
Ames Barnett, make a motion to approve.
We got, Nia, did you get?
Tobias in
Okay.
second.
All right. Any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign. All right, motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kristen. Next up, we're going to have a Deputy Commissioner Kirchler. Are you going to cover this, the meeting date change, I guess?
I am. So good morning and thank you all for being here and thank you for your attendance, whether online or face-to-face. I know it takes a lot of your time and energy and we appreciate it. What we would like to propose is for you all to consider, you don't have to make the decision today, but to consider moving our November, I believe it's 17th, workforce board meeting, pushing it a little earlier to October, between the 25th and the 26th, to join the TCSG Fall Leadership Summit Conference that happens in Savannah on an annual basis. And this event includes participation with the TCSG State Board, the TCSG Foundation Board. It also has the State Association of Foundation Directors and the State Association of College Board of Directors chairs, right? So there will also be a number of peer group meetings from the college's different divisions, and President's Council will be occurring at the same time. We thought it might be a great opportunity for the Workforce Board to get to know some of their counterparts on the TCSG State Board, and to become a little more familiar with those individuals, the work that's done in terms of workforce development on the TCSG side of the house. When I say we're all TCSG, trust me, we are all team TCSG, but on the credit, non-credit side of the house versus what we're doing specifically in workforce. I think we've been a little bit, the two boards certainly, or the three boards have certainly been a little bit separate, which isn't bad, but I think it might provide you some good insights and an opportunity to network and get to know some of your other colleagues and perhaps see other opportunities to serve within the system. Those 2 days also encompass some professional development opportunities, some really neat workshop presentations that occur. And so we wanted to present that as a possibility. So it's something for you all to consider. What we'll be doing is following up after this meeting, because we realize that telling us today that, oh yeah, we can do that, is not necessarily an ideal thing for you to be able to do. So we would like to follow up. Nia will be sending out a poll to determine your interest and desire to combine our meeting with that event and do them simultaneously and to participate in some of those other opportunities. So you can let us know your desires one way or the other, and then we'll move forward with making those plans accordingly. If you desire to do that and we're in agreement, we'll do a formal vote on it in August, but we'll be making the preparation well in advance and keeping you all informed of everything that goes into planning for that travel experience. So does anybody have any questions for me around that? Okay, well, I just wanted you all to know we're going to be, we'd like for you to consider this opportunity. Nia will be following up with a poll, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. And I do want to again thank all of the committee chairs for their work and the team supporting. I know that this is how the work does get done, and the coordination with the local areas is extremely important, and everyone is doing a really a great job doing that. So just my hats off to the entire team. And I also like to say that for our board members, participating in these committees really is how our opportunity to actually have a significant influence on what's going on around the state, but also it's a tremendous learning opportunity. So if you haven't had the chance to, you're welcome to attend any of the committee meetings. It's open to all of our board members. And so the schedule's out there. So just would encourage you to, not only from the standpoint of participating in our committee structure, but also participating in the local workforce development areas, which are working hard. And as we've all come out of this pandemic and this new environment, we've been working with a lot of challenges, and you're going to appreciate the work that's being done by all the folks that are frontline each and every day. All right, we're going to keep going. Next up, we have the commissioners. Turn over to, I guess, your commissioners' announcements. So Commissioner Dozier, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to present today. I got a little nervous last night when I saw announcements. It always has but I have some comments, but no announcements today. At least I don't think I do. First and foremost, Stuart, thanks again for hosting us. I think the chairman mentioned that, but also just want to share with the team here. Kia continues to be such a great partner to workforce and the pipeline for our entire state. Last night, we had our first kind of major fundraising initiative for the state foundation. And it was, we titled it Moonlight in the Pines, and it was a singer-songwriter opportunity for folks to come together. And really, we partnered with two state agencies, DECAL and TCSG, and we brought two teams together to really focus on really the future pipeline of this state, starting at the earliest ages all the way through post-secondary education efforts. And DECAL and TCSG has really been trying to align on those efforts. You know, it's just incredible, but I also want to thank Stuart for that as well. He was one of our presenting sponsors, so appreciate that. Really want to thank, Kelsey's not here today, but want to thank Kelsey and the team, because you never know a first event, how it's going to be. And I'm going to say this because I'm really encouraging everyone in here for next year's event, because it was so successful that I really hope you don't miss that opportunity. Obviously, there's a goal there of fundraising. But the other thing, it was just an incredible event. We held it at the Bobby Jones Golf Course downtown Atlanta. And so it's a really neat opportunity to have a stage with the background of a beautiful golf course with a skyline behind the golf course. And then just some great local talent putting on a show. And a lot of folks come together focused on what we're here today focused on, which is the future of this state. So I put a plug in there, but also more importantly, just what a great event. It was just incredible to all those that participated, especially those that put the hard work in to do it. The other thing I wanted to say was we have a great OWD team. And so the one thing over the last 2 years is we continue to grow and develop. I couldn't be more proud of the team, most of them sitting behind me. I will apologize. You mentioned some of those changes, so I'll really congratulate those that had great opportunities, but one particular that you ended on, I feel a little bit at fault. We had employee appreciation not too long ago, and although I'll take the blame, I believe Karen put me up to it, and Stephen came to it, and he had trimmed his beard. And Karen said, you ought to go say something to him. And the next thing I know, he's
gone,
resigning
right?
and leaving us. So I apologize to the whole team here and everybody at the table that I may have some ownership in the Sonny's taking off. But we are going to miss those that are leaving us, because it is a good team. And obviously, those that have joined recently are just incredible. So very, very pleased with that. A couple of updates, and it's really just more around visioning and strategic planning. And I just feel like it's important, because what Karen said, if we are able to move this meeting to have that joint opportunity to fellowship with the TCSG State Board, the local foundation boards in each of the 22 colleges, the economic development opportunities, it just really brings that continuous improvement and that alignment, which is so important. And that's something we've been focusing on internally at TCSG. And so one of the things we'll be doing, I know I have one board member here, Chunk, we'll be presenting, not this coming board meeting, not the June, but we'll be presenting at the following. We take July off, so it'll be August. We'll be presenting our new strategic plan, like everybody does each year. But that strategic plan has a different little twist this year, and we focused on something that I think is going to be really fitting for us as we do the true alignment of our agency and bringing each division together and having that continuous improvement model. And it's called StratOp, and it's a collision of strategy and operations. But more importantly, what's not in the name is really the work that goes into that. So I couldn't be more proud of our team at TCSG and kind of how they focus. These things may sound generic, but the true girth behind these topics are really going to change the future layout of our workforce. In my opinion, I think we have opportunity to do some big things in today's environment, where we have so many needs and so much focus on workforce, and it plays right into the work of this board and our local 19 local boards. But those five areas that we're focusing in is enrollment growth and pathways to success, recruitment and retaining important staff, partnerships, student services, and innovation and research. And I won't spend a ton of time, but I'm going to give you a taste of that because those are generic. But it's really a continuous improvement model where the nimbleness of TCSG can really react very quickly to the community because our workforce pipeline changes so rapidly. But obviously on enrollment and growth, we're zero in the end, just as we hope this board does as well. On those areas of high demand, whether it be welding, nursing, manufacturing, cyber, CDL, but it really takes it another level. One of the things that we hope comes out of this is a center of excellence, specifically in manufacturing. We believe what's already come out of the early work is the great success around CDL, as you saw the governor's giving TCSG a grant of over $8 million to expand that footprint, and then local partners and industry partners like Coke coming in and donating $1 million for the operational side of that. So as you look, we're going to be able to double that footprint in TCSG through the CDL, through this effort. And so as you hear those type of things, they're very strategic, very operational, and when we accomplish something, we can move the next thing into there to really keep it moving. As you look into partnerships, one of the things you've heard about is apprenticeships. That's one of those areas of partnerships. And as you know, we were blessed through the legislative process to have legislation that empowers that from the state level of really incentivizing our industry partners to have apprenticeships, and it came with some money at $1.275 million. If you didn't notice this week, the governor made another announcement on grants that came out, and TCSG was awarded another $4 million that's going to go toward, and I want to thank Karen for her effort on writing that grant, to go toward apprenticeships. And so as you look at this vision of what this board, TCSG board, the local boards are focused on, you're seeing a real alignment of the needs that you guys are experiencing locally. And so you're going to start seeing those action items come out. The last thing I'll really say is you're also going to see a change as far as things of how we do it more rapidly. That's good and bad. You know, there's a reason that it takes 2 years to get a full degree or a certificate in some cases. But there's also opportunities through micro-credentialing, other nano-credentialing, if you want to say it, to get a quick, rapid response to a skill set that's needed. And TCSG has been focusing on that, specifically in a non-credit type environment. But as we roll out what we're calling Badger, you start hearing that, and that's really those badges to kind of see what type of skill set you're learning, whether you're adult education as a look over Bobby and Kiana, or you're working just in a local industry and you need a skill. We're also now looking at how can we have that credit on the front. It's still a micro-credential. It can be non-credit, but there's no reason it couldn't be a short-term credit program that just gets you going. And so very excited about that effort that's coming out of this strat out process that we're going through. A couple other things that's on there. The last one's something we've not done a lot from a strategic part from system office, and that's the innovation and research. Stephen Ferguson's been leading that. If y'all know Stephen, he's a ball of energy. Man, we have been diving into obviously e-mobility as it continues to move so rapidly toward us, clean manufacturing, nanotechnologies, automation. There is a lot going on with that. And the exciting thing is I didn't go into all the partnership all the way from DeKalb all the way to USG. But when you look at these opportunities of innovation and research, a lot of the grants are diving into the vocational area of training. So it's bringing a true partnership beyond our articulation agreements to where a lot of these grants where the state's focusing on it, we're cutting across those barriers as far as different agencies. And so this research and innovation is going to put us at the forefront of really furthering education from a totality purpose and on the front end versus the back end. So I just wanted to give you a little taste. We'll be sharing the actual full plan with this board once my TCSG board votes on it in August. But I just wanted to kind of give you a feel of that alignment that we're going through and how it really affects everything we're working on here. I also think that the vote that we just took on the strategic visioning, we're doing as we look at enrollment growth, we want total enrollment growth, obviously. So I'm not just focused on one area, but we also want to be very intentional on those high demand, high career areas where it has a true wage that really changes our communities at the same time. And so while we've been doing that already, we're going to put an extra emphasis on that, whether it be CDL, nursing, manufacturing. Areas that all of us keep getting our ear twisted on, especially sitting next to somebody who we're always talking about workforce with Stewart over here. So it's really exciting. I really think that it's coming together. And I also want to thank Karen. Karen's the lead on that partnership side. And so as she drives and helps direct you guys and me in the workforce area as far as this board goes, she's also driving it from a global area when you look across the state from a partnership, which really connects with our workforce boards and other things. The last thing I'll end with is had a great opportunity to visit, because with COVID, I really had not done this, to visit with all of our workforce board directors down in Jekyll when we had a conference. And I know a couple of them are here. I see Tiffany over here and a few others, but just a great opportunity to really talk about the strategic alignment, answer any questions as we move forward. It really kind of just brought us together, as I do believe we are one team. I use Team TCSG. I don't really care what you use as long as we're all in it. But I am very proud of the team approach. Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. And obviously, if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer.
First of all, are there any questions for Commissioner? Well, I think you should stick with Commissioner announcements, because those were wonderful. And I will tell you, being a part of this, I've been involved with the workforce system for over 20 years now, serving in some capacity. And it's always what I've always been impressed with is the people in our organization and how well we work together. And that is something that we should not take for granted. And to your point on innovation, research, continuous improvement, all at the elements that you just described, and how important it is for all of us to work together, I think is great. And that also should give some momentum to us getting together in Savannah in October, because we got a chance to see some of those key players working together. But Commissioner, we greatly appreciate your support. Yes, and I'm also a Karen fan. And she's doing a great job, not only representing the state well, but also she represents the state very well at the national level. But it's just this team has done a great job. And so we appreciate your leadership and support. And we know that we're headed in a very good direction. And that's because you're here. So thank you. All right, next up, Deputy Commissioner Kirchler, we're going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for all the kind words. I appreciate it very much. I just want to touch on a little bit of the work that's been going on and some of the good stuff that has come about. The commissioner already mentioned a couple of these, but we have an apprenticeship state expansion grant that was set to expire June 30th. Fortunately, Brandon Ona and his team, the apprenticeship team, had submitted a modification request that would also include a one-year extension. We submitted that back in December and we're on pins and needles and nudging USDOL, and thankfully the modification was approved. We just learned about it, a week, 10 days ago. And so the modification will allow us a great deal more flexibility in terms of how we award the funds for training reimbursements. So that's a really positive thing. We also received the $4.2 million in state fiscal recovery funds for apprenticeships. This is CARES Act money, and we're really grateful to have it. It'll provide $4 million to offset training costs for apprentices, so it can pay for equipment, PPE, and just the actual cost of training. If I just want to, I know we have a lot of local area directors who are listening in. I just want to suggest to you that if you're working with employers who are very interested in establishing apprenticeships, we have a body of experts in the state office. Please call on them for support. If you're meeting with employers, if employers have a different training provider than a local college, we can work with them and serve as a sponsor to them and carry forward as well. Also, all 22 of your technical colleges serve as serve as apprenticeship sponsors. They can, and they have a point of contact who is a person of expertise who can support that. So our goal is to marry these funds with the ASC funds, also with the HDCI. This was the Senate bill that was passed that Commissioner referenced. So the High Demand Career Initiative Apprenticeship Program, all of these funds provide us an opportunity to really kind of leverage some of our partnerships with employers. So we want to take full advantage of this. This 1 million will provide incentive funding directly to employers. So they have to create or expand existing apprenticeships. The incentive is awarded when the apprenticeship is completed, when the entire apprenticeship is completed. So apprenticeships can be from 1 year to 4 years. And awards will range from $5,000 to $10,000, depending on the duration of the apprenticeship. So our goal for this is to begin publicizing the program and the requirements of it, building all of that out by August. Open the application portal. It'll be an online application. That's our expectation right now. And that'll happen late September, early October. And then ideally, we would really like to take advantage of National Apprenticeship Week, which happens in November, and make those announcements of who the employers who are receiving these contracts for these incentives will be. I think it'll be a great PR opportunity. We can certainly kind of create some buzz around that. So those are 3 great opportunities around apprenticeships that we're very excited about, and the team has worked really, really hard in that regard. So in terms of partnerships, we don't just partner obviously with our core partners who are required to be members of our board, but we also are trying to expand our partnerships with other state agencies and to reinvigorate the partnerships that we have with our core partners who sit on our board. So we're having a meeting June 3rd at the state office. We really want to figure out better ways to streamline co-enrollment for participants. And to find opportunities to braid funding and leverage resources. Particularly, it's incredibly important to me and to us as we face ongoing budget cuts, that we find ways to minimize duplication of services and to better serve our participants, and ideally increase the number of participants that we're serving. But that's going to take a lot of cooperation and collaboration. So we're going to be working hard to that end. Also, we're going to be having an offsite team meeting on June 30th. That's for the OWD team and to kind of galvanize that group on our overarching goal for TCSG of closing the skills gap. That really summarizes what we're intending to do. I think it encapsulates what employers need, and it encapsulates what participants need. If we increase their skills and they're able to get a better job, it's a win-win for everyone. So we'll be spending that day talking about that, looking at the work that we do at the state level and how does that directly connect to participant success? Because I think sometimes when you're that far from it, it's easy to get divorced from that. And so I want to keep the team's motivation high because they do good work. And we'll be looking at identifying some goals and objectives for the new fiscal year to advance our overall mission. So that's what we've got coming up. I did want to give some shout outs to our teams. Programs and compliance has been busy, finishing up monitoring. Brittany's going to tell you all about monitoring, but it is a hard lift. And the grants and finance team has also been engaged in monitoring, and I really appreciate their work. Programs and compliance, also state plan modification and submission. That has been a bit of a lift. Every 2 years, we have to do a modification on our 4-year plan. And so that's been an ongoing, interesting process with ETA. And grants and finance, they in the midst of doing weekly drawdowns and processing contracts and so forth, they've also completed a comprehensive overview of our finance-related internal procedures. So that team has really been working hard. I just want you to have a sense, there's a whole lot of work that goes on up there, and there's people doing good stuff. The apprenticeship, the business services division, and with apprenticeships falls up under that. Brandon Ona, pretty much, I would have to give him credit. It was almost single-handedly completed the Apprenticeships Building America grant submission. He did a great job on that, and fingers crossed. We hope to hear later this summer. That would provide us $4 million again, towards building those partnerships and apprenticeships. The apprenticeship team, our apprenticeship state expansion grant, really, we hadn't made a lot of progress on it initially when I came into this role. This team picked it up and has made huge gains on that. We're very well positioned to be successful next year when that grant concludes, so I'm very proud of that. And also, they've gotten the sector partnership grants out, put that application together, put a lot of modifications to it. I asked them to put more teeth to it, to really look for a little more meat in those applications, and I think they did a good job of putting that together. The data team, working on performance negotiations with the feds and figuring out the local area allocations, those calculations, which are basically a statistical regression model, which I can say those words, but I can't do those functions. So we have much smarter people than me in those roles, and I'm very grateful to Stephen, Dana, and Nicole, and Norris, and all the work that they're doing, also prepping for our ETPL reporting changes that the feds have mandated. So that will look a little different, and we'll give you more information on that. I know I'm saying a lot of things, and you might be like, that's nice, Karen. We don't know what that means. That's fine. I just really want you to have a sense of the breadth of work that the team is doing. I failed to mention that the Strategics POPs group, Rizani and her team, they've been busy working closely with Adult Ed on the Career Plus HSE program, and working on a number of partnerships with community and state agencies to build out different programming and streamline some of our efforts like we've been talking about for participants. So I want to commend them. They're very quiet. They're just always toiling away back there. I never hear them. I'm not sure what they're doing, but I know they're working hard. So I just call up Brittany and I was like, what's going on? And there we go. Also, lastly, I don't want to steal Robin's thunder because she's going to come up and tell you about the Academy. But the Academy was great, just by all reports. I mean, it just was, y'all. I wish you could have all been there. We had lots of directors, lots of staff who participated, staff from local areas who had a lot of compliments, but a lot of work went into that. Nia, Robin, Tyler, and Andrea really did the heavy lift. Tanya was also helping with contracts and so forth. Couldn't have happened without any of them. Thankfully, we had the participation and the support of Chairman Dallas and Commissioner Dozier, and we had so many sessions and so forth. It was entirely a team effort, so very, very proud. That is all I have.
Great, thank you very much. Before we go, I think we still have, we're a little slightly ahead of schedule, so we're going to let's just take a quick 10-minute break, and then we'll resume back at, I don't know, whatever 10 minutes is from now. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and we can call everybody back. Okay, next up, we have the Office of Adult Education. With us today is Assistant Commissioner Dr. Kiana Good, and with her is the Executive Director, Bobby Creech. So we're going to turn the floor over to the two of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize I'm about 6 inches shorter than the previous speaker, so I'm going to stand sort of in the middle of the podium, so it's not like I'm at a high chair. It's always a pleasure to talk about adult education and the really critical work that we do. I love the fact that I can point very clearly to how adult education, WIOA Title II, fits into the larger vision of this particular body, setting Georgia up to be the most innovative public workforce system through a strict focus on developing and connecting talent with opportunity. I'm going to quickly discuss the federal laws that govern WIOA Title II, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Bobby Creech to speak specifically about some of our unique partnerships between our local adult education programs and our local workforce boards. And he's also going to touch on some of the collaboration that we've had between our state office, OAE, Office of Adult Education, with OWD. So for adult education, there are three main federal sections, Section 231 and 225. Those are both general education funds. These funds provide high school equivalency preparation. If you see a sign that says free GED classes, that's exactly what that is. English language instruction, workplace preparation activities, family or multi-generational literacy, and IET, Integrated Education and Training. And we've spoken a lot about IET, but for those who are unfamiliar with that term, it really is having a concurrent adult education class along with workforce training. 231 is the general grant for all eligible individuals, and eligible individuals are those folks who are 16 years of age or older, who lack a high school equivalency, or who are struggling with English proficiency. 243 provides for the exact same sort of mechanisms, the same service model, but it is specifically for those folks who are in corrections or institutionalized individuals. And we owe a Title II requires all states to have a set aside for corrections. Our applicants, we do have a competitive RFA every 4 years. So our local adult education programs operate across the state of Georgia. Every county has a service provider. All 22 of our technical colleges offer adult education programming. We have 4 school systems that also offer adult education programming. They're all located in the Metro Atlanta area. We have 3 community-based organizations, and we have 1 faith-based organization. So at the end of 2019, right before COVID, we had, if you will, a brand refresh. We started referring to adult education as it's go time. We're all about Georgia opportunities. It was really important for us to make sure that people understood that adult education provides a bridge to greater career opportunities. We have set really ambitious targets around high school equivalency, IET participation, and ultimately workforce participation. It's important to us that not only are we moving people into the workforce, but we're also moving them into the workforce with the possibility of earning a family sustaining wage. While COVID certainly impacted our numbers, our enrollment numbers, our HSE numbers, I am really delighted to sort of share where we are now. Typically, we have had around 600 participants in an IET. I'm very proud to share that we're now at well over 1,000 participants. We have well over 31,000 enrolled adult education students, and we have set a target to have well over 15,000 high school equivalencies attained by the end of FY24. We are certainly so appreciative of our partners and so appreciative of the partnerships that we've been able to foster between our local workforce boards and our adult education programs. And now Mr. Creech is going to talk specifically about what that looks like and how we've been able to use those partnerships to impact these goals. Bobby?
Thank you, Dr. Good, and good morning. It's always a pleasure to present to a group the good work that our adult education programs are doing across the state of Georgia. There is a tremendous need for services. As you know, there are about 1.1 million people in Georgia that lack the high school diploma or lack their high school equivalency. So our 30 providers that are out doing the work is really critical to the success for their families and for the workforce. So I really want to talk about 3 areas that Dr. Good has already touched on, and really the collaboration or the partnerships that have been formed really as a part of WIOA, and really has been strengthened, I think, by Workforce, Office of Workforce Development, joining the TCSG team. So I think that, you know, we've always had a good relationship, but we can obviously see the strengthening since they've joined us. So the first area is high school equivalency. And of course, we have our 30 providers. They are out in those local areas and their communities, really networking and engaging with those local workforce boards. So in addition to having our funds, several of those providers also do the out-of-school youth. They have out-of-school youth funding, so they have applied for the funding for their local areas and are serving that population of students as well. A few of those are Georgia Northwestern Technical College, Lanier Technical College, and West Georgia Technical College. But even if they don't have those funds, they do have strong partnerships with those out-of-school youth providers. So they may be serving those individuals in adult education classes, helping them achieve their goals. And a couple of those areas I know that really strong that I would highlight is Southeastern Technical College and Wiregrass Georgia Technical College. As a part of WIOA, it brought about more collaboration in the sense of it's not just that you're referring services. So there's always been a tremendous process for referring, making sure that students are accessing and being able to get services. But we also, there was the requirement of, if necessary and needed, co-location. So a couple of areas where adult ed classes are actually co-located with the one-stop area, it's Cobb WorkSource and Lanier Technical College. You know, over the last 3 years, we've expanded our options for high school equivalency. We have, of course, the GED that everybody has known for a long time, but we also added HiSET, which is another standardized assessment. But a couple of years ago, we're really excited that we were able to launch an initiative or a pilot at that time called Career Plus High School Equivalency. And that really is an opportunity for students 21 and older to not only to pursue a different route, to use those high school credits that they earned and then match those high school credits, finish them up if necessary through our programs, and then take a TCC, a diploma, or an associate program through our colleges to earn their high school equivalency. We are piloting that at 5 of our colleges: Columbus Tech, Albany Tech, Savannah Tech, Athens Tech, and Central Georgia Tech. It seems to be going well. There is a great partnership between those local areas and our colleges. I can say that from the Office of Workforce Development, that has been strengthened. Recognize Rosani Rios, who serves on our internal advisory committee, and she leads and heads up the braided funding committee for that work. So I want to recognize her, as well as Deputy Commissioner Kirchler sits on there, and they're able to give us input on the services and how the services can be strengthened, making sure that those local areas and our providers understand the cross points, the connections of how they can engage and work with the students. Also want to talk about, as Dr. Good said, integrated education and training. And this is one of the areas that I'm really most excited about. The work that we do, it's new work. It's Commissioner, it's helping to close the skills gap. It's really giving an opportunity for adult education students to receive training. We recently branded that Training on the Go. So it's an opportunity for our students, while they're working on their high school equivalency, while they're working on their English language skills, while they're working on citizenship, to engage in workforce training that will help them be more marketable and get into the workforce more quickly. In looking at that particular initiative, Athens Technical College has received both state and national recognition for their partnership with WorkSource Northeast Georgia. They have a strong partnership. We have strong partnerships all across Georgia, but really want to recognize that they received an award recently from the Council on Adult Basic Education in Washington State. The partnership really are essential for our adult ed providers to understand what are the high demand industries. We know that because we're a part of the Technical College System of Georgia, but where can adult education help meet that need? What are those entry-level certificates and credentials? What are the employers that are most in need that will hire our students, perhaps while they're working on their high school equivalency or after they're working on that. The success of that, as Dr. Good mentioned, has been tremendous. Our goal was to have 631 students enroll. We're over for this year. We're over 1,000 students, and we have 685 students who actually have earned credentials this fiscal year as of yesterday. So super excited. But really those local partnerships around identifying the employers, making sure that the employer needs are met with these entry-level training. Some of the trainings that our programs are providing are welding, CNA, some areas in the hospitality, home health aid, ServSafe. You know, the hospitality industry has been hit really hard during the pandemic. So being able to provide those trainings, and the local areas, the workforce boards, the one-stop partners are really critical in helping to inform that work. A few other things, you know, individual training accounts. We've had some success with that at areas like Gwinnett Technical College with their programs around welding, medical admin assistant, and phlebotomy for our adult ed students. I mean, it's just exciting to see. And we piloted a program a few years ago called Accelerating Opportunity. And we know that when students can participate in something that they're really interested in and they're engaged in, like training that's going to lead to work, they're going to be more successful in our program and into their studies. Also, really just want to thank the state workforce group for their support of our IET, helping to look at opportunities across the state and help us engage with other partners. The final area that I want to touch on is yes, sir.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
I know, first of all, I think on the IET, maybe more specifically, which I think is great, how are you reaching those that need these services? Tell me, because I know it's always been a tough one to figure out and connect. So I'm just curious on how y'all are doing that.
So are you talking specifically about students who need the services?
Yes.
Okay, so as students enroll, each of our programs have worked to identify what the high demand industries are. So, you know, let's just take Gwinnett Technical College for an example, phlebotomy, medical admin assistant, welding. Those are a couple of 3 areas that they have identified are real needs for their community. So what we do is just through the engagement of students being enrolled in the program, that's where we find the most success. They're already enrolled, they're working along that. They maybe have a little bit, let's say, it's not always easy to earn that high school equivalency. It may take 6 months, it may take a year. So while you're in this program of study, let's get you engaged in this training to move along. The other thing is just promotion out in the program. Word of mouth is probably one of the most successful things. Gwinnett Technical College named their program Take 10. And so they've been advertising and promoting that, but that's really one of the things that we thought we had. IET, what is IET? So that's why we recently branded it Training on the Go, so that we have a clear message really across the state.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So the final area that I want to touch on is workplace literacy and our support of employers and partnerships. It really is about strengthening Georgia's workforce. Back in the early 80s, the late 80s in adult ed, we really had some strong workplace partnerships. Through the downturn in the economy early on and those kinds of things just kind of shifted and have looked different, but we are in the process of rebuilding those strong partnerships. Our programs are in the process of rebuilding those partnerships through workplace literacy. We need to meet the individual where they are. And if they're not coming through our door, we need to go into where they are. And by working with employers to make sure that their employees have the skills that they need to perform the task and jobs. So I won't go through each of the ones up on the screen, but I've tried to spotlight just a few examples of what's currently going on in our programs with workplace literacy. But it really is making sure that employers' needs are met. the citizenry needs are met in terms of the skills that they need, but that workplace partners are engaged and are participating. From the state level, really rely on people like Deputy Commissioner Kirchler to help keep us informed of these things. She recently brought us to attention of a great potential partnership with the Visiting Nurses Association as an example that we maybe could offer IET and training to that population and to support the need in that area. So those are the three areas that I kind of wanted to touch base on. Is there any questions of Dr. Good or myself?
No questions. I just wanted to say, what I see so much out there with the pandemic is that the entry-level positions are the ones that are being the most impacted. So I love to hear what you're saying. And there is a huge need for help in the state for the entry-level positions, along with soft skills and the other education programs. So it's just wonderful to hear. And I hear that. I go to meetings with the Chief Human Resource Officers across the state. And because people have had an opportunity to move up with the pandemic, post-pandemic, or during the pandemic, this is the area being hit the hardest. So really appreciate that focus on entry-level work and opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
The other thing, Mr. Chairman and members, just like to add to what Dr. Good and Bobby has shared. The IET is so crucial. I'm not sure it was said in here, but some of the studies that the team has done has shown that without truly adding a skill to that high school equivalency, that a lot of times the end result is that individual doesn't realize the opportunities that the door has opened. And so one of the incredible things as we continue to have those needs in the workforce pipeline is as we integrate these IETs, it really opens that door to those individuals who really finally accomplish something, but don't realize how that door has opened to the rest of the world and the opportunities really change their lives with a different job. So I think the team has done a phenomenal job trying to communicate not only the opportunity to get that high school equivalency, but really the door that it opens once they get it through this to help with the pipeline. So thank y'all for what you do.
Thank you. And Commissioner, to that point, I really appreciate the board's support of Career Plus. We have 9 graduates thus far, and one of our graduates from Athens Technical College is now commanding a salary of $70,000 a year as a result of Career Plus high school equivalency and having an alternative, pathway to earn that.
Excellent. And I mean, we love to hear those success stories. And I know that the potential and the opportunity is way more folks out there that if given the chance and create more awareness, then we'll have more success stories like that. I also appreciate the focus. Literacy, something that I've had a chance to champion here the past few years. And I didn't fully appreciate the magnitude of what we were up against. I think that including this as part of what we're doing and making those connections, it really must be a part of our strategy here going forward. So I appreciate the work you're all doing.
Thank you. Yes, we have well over 1 million adults in Georgia alone who lack a high school equivalency or high school diploma. And so while we're pleased that we're at 31,000 enrolled, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so we're hoping with greater awareness, we can combat the illiteracy issue that we have in our state.
A tremendous amount of untapped potential is in Georgia, and we need all citizens working. And so I think efforts like this definitely are critical to our success. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up for our riveting presentation on the budget, Kristen Larhoven.
Riveting. Okay, before I discuss budget, I did want to go over our funding changes this year. We've kind of talked about this year after year, but I just wanted to spend a little more time on this year because it happened again. We got cut again. So if you look at the slide, this is the percentage change, or the percentage change is just from last year to this year. But we have gotten cut the past 5 program years consecutively. So the first 3 program years, the funding overall at the federal level got cut. So, you anticipate cuts when that happens. And one of the biggest factors that goes into how the federal government allocates those funds to us is the amount of unemployed individuals that we have in our unemployment rate. And it's a point of pride that Georgia stacks up very well there, which means that we receive less funding. But the past 2 years, so last year, it was a flat budget. So Congress allocated the same amount of money, we still got cut. This year, Congress allocated more money overall, Georgia still got cut. So again, while we are very proud of how Georgia stacks up against other states with that number, it's still starting to crunch. And while that, it is an understandable number to account for so highly in that allocation formula, that doesn't take into account a lot of other things. So Georgia's increase in population it's not that it doesn't factor into that, but doesn't factor into that substantially. Individuals who have jobs but are still not above the poverty level, or the job is not sustaining, doesn't really factor into that. Those are some large statewide factors, but even some smaller factors. One of the things that doesn't factor into that almost at all is like something like a military spouse who might not be actively looking, but hasn't come into the place where they need helps moving certifications, new certifications, licensing assistance. So there's a lot of populations that can miss out on this funding when we receive funding that is so heavily impacted by Georgia's very low unemployment rate. So while this is something that we've looked at year after year, we've kind of seen, I think our leadership and Karen kind of want to change our posture to where we're not just looking at it, but where we're advocating for the state and maybe looking at some other ways that we could advocate for to try to tweak the allocation formula a little bit so that we are able to better serve the people in our state. And I don't have any data to back this up, but from my experience, when we take cuts like this, it's some of the people who need our services the most who are most impacted by formula funding cuts. And, obviously this is state level data. It would be very small if I showed you all the local area cuts, but rural areas take that on the nose every single time. And you'll see less and less funds allocated there. So I wanted to go into that a little bit more to come on that, but I just wanted to start that conversation as we look at the budget this year. Okay, that's tiny, but you have it in your packets. So our budget this year has not changed very much from last year. I'll go over a couple of things that did give us some changes. So the governor put in his budget, and it was approved by the legislature, a $5,000 state employee raise. We've allocated that into our salaries and benefit packages. One note on that, this salary total is a little higher than our actuals. So in Karen's presentation, and you've heard other people talk about it, we get competitive grants all the time. A lot of those grants do pay for or partially pay for staff member salaries. We still account for in our budget the entire staff member salary because those are time limited. Things do happen. And so we always want to make sure that we fully budgeted for our entire staff load. There's an item under that that's new called leave payout. So another thing that the governor put in his budget and was approved by the legislature is the ability to do partial cash outs of annual leave up to 40 hours a year. So employees will be able to do that, I believe, one time a year going forward. And so we've budgeted for that. While that's now going to be a yearly line item, from a planning perspective, it's actually better for us because before, if a individual retired or left the agency, you were paying out that entire annual leave, whether or not someone had spent that entire time with you. So those could be, if you had someone retiring after 30 years of service, those could be extensive payouts. That was kind of a one-time thing and was very difficult to plan for. So you'll see that year after year, but it'll be better for us in the long-term planning wise. Things like travel, supplies, your travel, IT equipment, PeopleSoft fees, which is, the state accounting system that we pay into, rent and utilities. Those amounts are pretty much carrying over from last year with nominal upgrades. And then also when you get into our contracts, they are mostly for data systems. Again, carried over costs. We've seen some nominal fee increases, but nothing substantial that is worth looking into. And then the two items at the bottom, we are looking to fund another sector partnership round. Brandon is currently going through the award process on that. That is not included in our first year funding. That's actually second year funding, but even if it was included in first year funding, it's something that is affordable, and we would be able to afford and do that. And then of course our rapid response expenditures, and with what that looks like. So that is our budget, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions? All right, I know we're going to need to take action.
Yes, sir.
On this.
Yes, sir.
So do we have a motion? Do we have to approve the budget? So do we have a motion to approve?
Tobias, and make a motion.
All right, I think, Nia, did we get the motion in the second? All right, any other discussion? Questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
And Kristen, I know that before you leave, I know I said riveting, but the fact is, it really is critical because of those issues you described. And I know that Deputy Commissioner Kirchhoff and I have talked about this at the national level. Other states are also having similar concerns, and our ability to serve, the demand or the need is still there, even though the dollars are going down. So it is getting harder for our local areas. This is a real challenge. And so I think as we look at ways to really figure out how do we continue to serve is going to be hard. So we know that folks are really working hard to figure this out. So thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have OWD monitoring report. We'll turn over to Brittany Walsh.
Another riveting topic. So as you all know, every year around this time, we conclude our monitoring process. We will be completing the full monitoring summary report in the coming weeks. So you all will be getting more information about that when that's available. And I know that we have some newer members on the board. So when we send that out, we'll also include our regular one-pager around monitoring for any of those newer folks or anyone who wants a refresher. So there will be more to come, but today I wanted to just kind of hit some highlights and give you guys an overview of what we saw this season. So this slide is a very brief overview of our process. And I put this up here just to give you guys an idea of what it looks like. Again, if anyone is new to this process. We wrapped up our last monitoring review 2 weeks ago. So we have completed our reviews and closed out fully 10 of the 19 areas. But for the others, we're in this corrective action piece. That can take anywhere from a few days to a few months for areas to rectify issues. As you can imagine, some things are easier to tweak and make sure that it's corrected, but others may require a board vote, so we're waiting for meetings. So it can kind of vary, but we've seen pretty quick resolution of issues this year. We have another handful of areas that we anticipate will close out by the end of this month, and everyone should be wrapped up by the end of June. At the end of the program year is typically what we aim for. So this, hopefully y'all can see this, but this is just an overview of the number of findings between last year and this year that we monitored. As a reminder, we're always monitoring like a year delayed. We wait until a program year wraps up to review it. So this is PY19 and PY20, even though we're currently in PY21. We'll get into the why of this in a little bit, but obviously you can see overall we saw a lot fewer findings this year. We had some areas that pretty significantly overhauled and updated their policies, processes, structures. And I would be remiss if I did not commend our local areas for all the work that they've done. Obviously we're here to support them and provide TA as they're correcting issues, but a lot of this was proactive on their part. So wanted to give them kudos for all the hard work that they did between monitoring seasons to implement new policies and structures. So this slide will give you an overview of this year's findings that we gave. As you all may be aware, our testing categories we describe them as big umbrellas. There's lots of things that can fall under this, but we thought this was the easiest way to capture for you all where we saw the most findings. And again, the important thing to note is we saw a significant decrease in findings this year and more observations, which you can see at the bottom there. Just to distinguish between those real quick, a finding is something that is a direct violation of federal regulations, state policy, or an area's own local policy. We evaluate them for all levels of requirements. Whereas an observation is something that we may be recommending to them that there is a potential for an issue. We've identified a best practice that they could implement. These are more recommendations to improve their processes, policies, those sorts of things. I did also include in orange here, you've got the numbers from PY19. So again, we saw a significant decrease. Finance didn't really have that many findings this year. As you can see, the biggest areas are under the financial management systems and contracting, which again, those are very big umbrellas. Contracting can be anything from, missing provisions in a contract, missing signatures, period of performance, those sorts of things. It can cover a lot. But we do see a lot of findings from the finance side under contracting for that reason. Similarly with compliance, local development board reviews cover everything from bylaws, standing committees, attendance, vacancies. So it's a pretty broad category. Again, this year we didn't see very many, but that is the category for compliance that we see the most issues. Now, programmatic administration is perhaps the largest umbrella of all of our testing categories. That covers things like their policies and procedures, parts of the case file review fall under that. And so that's why we see a lot of issues here. It's a lot of, I was gonna say ticky-tacky, they're not, they're important obviously, but it's smaller issues that then get rolled up into one finding. So we see, or into one testing category. So we see a lot more there. And I want to allay any fears. That's not usually repeat issues that we're seeing, even though, we see a lot there year to year. It's slightly different things every year. So again, most common findings for the three teams I've already touched on. But the other thing I wanted to get into with this presentation is talk to you all about our approach to corrective actions. Again, in the last few years, really in the last 5 years, I would say, we've not seen any major issues. We've issued a disallowed cost here or there and corrected those issues, because obviously that's a more serious concern if we're having to say, hey, you misappropriated or misspent this money. We've not seen a whole lot of that. And I like to think that our approach to corrective actions is the reason for that. So we take a two-pronged approach. As we're crafting these issues, we'll look at what's the specific issue that we found, what can we do to fix that, but then more generally, what controls can we put in place? If it's a case file issue, obviously there's a process to follow, but what happens when a case manager misses that piece? How do you catch that? So we try to approach it that way. And we do not keep like a findings bank or log of language for that, because again, we want to craft those corrective actions according to the issue that we've identified. But as you see here, I talk about, we have some common themes, I guess we would call them, for that approach. So we're going to be looking at what's on paper, what's the perfect world process for how this should work. But then, what checks or controls are in place when we think about real world solutions to those problems. Pieces of a case file are going to get left on a case manager's desk. You know, that happens occasionally, but how do we catch that? Do we do a secondary review of case files? Do we shore up the policy? So we do both of those things, but then who's responsible at the local staff and even at our staff for implementing those things? So staff training is the third component there. You know, looking at what can we do to improve these processes and who all is involved in this to make them aware. Because again, perfect world, you can have it on paper, but that doesn't mean that it, you know, plays out that way in real life. So to hit the highlights, again, we issued fewer findings, but more observations. And again, I think that this is a credit to the local areas for the work that they've done to shore up their policies. I think the further we get into WIOA implementation, you know, we're finding more things that we need. We're implementing those. Local areas are able to take a proactive approach to saying, hey, we want to stand up this this program. We need to put this policy in place, instead of us coming out and saying, hey, you started this, let's have a policy. Another highlight from this season is that we were able to identify, because of all that work, a lot of best practices. And just a couple examples are case file management, local board operations, subrecipient monitoring processes. If an area does something well, you know, we try to take that policy, either have them do peer learning activities with another local area who may not be succeeding in that area, or we can take what the local area does and present a training with or for them. So we've been able to collect a lot of those things. And I think the successes that we're seeing in one area, we're going to be able to take that to other areas and help them implement that for themselves. And along those lines, we've identified areas for additional training and general support needed from the state office to the local areas. Part of our interviews with local staff is asking, you know, what support do you need? What policy help do you need? What research can we do for you? I think we all agree, obviously we have an oversight responsibility for these funds, but I think another big piece of our role is to provide support to the local areas who, when they're doing direct participant services, we can do some of the admin pieces or the research pieces and take that part of the burden for them. So we've been able to identify a lot of those opportunities this year. But then looking ahead, I wanted to give you guys an idea of, obviously the season ends, we celebrate that, we take a brief break, and then we hit the ground running again. So we've taken a couple weeks off. We're working through the corrective action pieces still, obviously, but we will be putting together an internal meeting with the OWD staff involved in monitoring, and then folks like Rosani's team and Stephen's team that don't monitor with us, but that information obviously touches them. And we'll debrief about what we saw this year, collect feedback from our staff about issues they ran into, what do they think went well. And then on the flip side of that, we'll also do that with the local areas. We'll kind of collect feedback throughout the year as we're monitoring them and talking with directors, but we do a survey at the end of every year just to collect, you know, all of that data at once, figure out, do we need to address communication? Do we need to tweak templates, anything like that to make the process smoother and clearer for everyone? Obviously this summer, we will be updating our tools to refine and streamline our process, make those tweaks based on any policy changes we've made in the last year. And again, we'll share our review results with our non-monitoring OWD teams. And then we will also, you know, link up with the local areas again to do a training before we kick off the next season, similar to what we do at the end of the season to collect feedback. We kind of give them a heads up of, hey, here's how the process has changed. Here's, you know, some important things we'll be looking at this year to kind of give them a heads up. We don't think it's fair to move goalposts without letting them know. So we always like to be clear at the beginning of the season of what our priorities are. And then I think this ties in nicely to the next presentation that we have from Robin, but I really think another piece of this puzzle, and the reason why we're seeing fewer findings and more observations, is to do with the training academy. I think the conference, the regular webinars that we've been able to offer, both give us a platform to address issues that come up in monitoring, but also allow us to be responsive to the needs of local areas and give that training proactively before we catch an issue in monitoring. So we'll be continuing those efforts, and I don't want to steal any of Robin's thunder, but I do think that that is a direct result or the fewer findings are a direct result of the increased training we've been able to do. So again, the full report will be available in the coming weeks, and we'll provide you guys with that information, but I'm happy to answer any questions if y'all have them.
Are there any questions? Well, Brittany, one thing, I'll say a couple of things. If you can leave that slide up for just a second. You know, Commissioner Dozier and Deputy Commissioner Kirchler were talking about us working together and talking about, you know, you and the rest of the team, how hard y'all work, and which really makes, when you're easy to work with, you tend to actually have the practical, honest conversations about what needs to be done. You understand the intent. And having served as a local board chair in the past, and what I've seen over these past really couple of decades now, I do want to give a huge kudos to the local areas. They have made, they've made a tremendous investment. And when positions open up as we transition, they're making sure that folks are walking in and they're given the skill sets, given the tools they need to be successful. I love the sharing the best practices across. It's just, I've just seen a tremendous effort there and a camaraderie that is just, it really is, I don't think it can be matched anywhere else in the nation. I just wanted, but it takes not only the local areas doing well, but the team here that's supporting and running everything doing well. And y'all are doing a great job. So just, I'm extremely proud of the work. And when I think of monitoring, no one likes to be monitored. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I know I don't like to be monitored. But the fact is we're staying in compliance, and because we have the right mindset, we're doing the right things. It puts us in a much better, stronger position to serve those that really need assistance. So because y'all are working well together, we're doing a much better job of serving. So great job and thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the 2022 WorkSource Academy Conference update, and I want to turn the floor over to my friend, Robin Roberts.
Can you see me? Good afternoon. Well, I feel like I need to provide some thunder, so we'll see. Well, I am happy to report that we hosted an in-person conference in early April, as you've heard, at the Jekyll Island Convention Center, and our theme was a pivot to greatness. It'd been 2.5 years since we had been face-to-face, so we highlighted many of the success stories and best practices that occurred during that time that exemplified a pivot to greatness, and we highlighted those throughout the conference. So our own, oh, I have it, sorry. Okay, so our own Andrea Young produced 7 videos that highlighted the theme, and they were shown throughout the 3 plenary sessions. So on day 1, thank you to Commissioner Dozier for providing comments during the opening session. On day 2, Chairman Dallas provided comments during the lunch session. And on day 3, our closing session, comments from Deputy Commissioner Kirchler, followed by a best practices panel moderated by our Executive Director, Kristen Larhoven. So for the closing session, what we did was show 3 of these best practices videos, and then the panel came up. So the WorkSource Northeast Georgia video was about their educator externship program, where teachers and counselors were able to learn what local in-demand industries are seeking in new hires. WorkSource Fulton video highlighted their partnership with Goodwill and what they are doing to elevate digital literacy skills in their area. And the WorkSource Southern Georgia video, Amy Jones shared recent successes, highlighted sector partnerships and their goals for the future. So as mentioned, for the breakout sessions, we did have 36 breakout sessions with over 45 speakers. We focused our programming on topics specifically for our local workforce development area staff and board members. So our OWD directors and staff identified and developed sessions for the adult and dislocated worker programs, business services and apprenticeships, compliance, data and information, finance, and youth programs. So now the fun part. We did something new this time. Thanks to our leadership to try to bring people together. It had been 2.5 years. So we included group activities to bring attendees together that had a common interest and or area of expertise. The goal was to get acquainted or reacquainted with one another and celebrate successes. And based on the feedback we received, the participants really enjoyed these sessions. They provided participants with an opportunity to receive information from the Office of Workforce Development, share stories, ask questions, and have some fun. We called this segment Birds of a Feather, and our own Tyler Johnson illustrated the birds that identified the 6 groupings. In closing, the response we received overall was very positive. We look forward to planning the next in-person session for 2023. And as mentioned earlier, there is a 5-minute video that is a recap of the conference, and we will show that during the lunchtime. So are there any questions for me? And I will share, and as hard as we were working, and we were, there were several times that I would say, don't tell anybody, but we're having fun. We did have fun putting this together. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. All right, so I think we're now at closing. Is there are there any other announcements or anything? I know that here in a few minutes we'll start lunch, I think a little bit early, 12:15 or so. And then if I'm not mistaken, Stuart, when we're eating lunch, we'll also be watching.
I'll give a presentation during lunch about the factory. So then afterwards,
Can you give him the mic? Yeah.
Yeah. So after. So during lunch,
Please give another mic.
I'll give a presentation about the factory, just some basic facts, figures surrounding it. Then there's those of you that, maybe it's me, there he goes. There are those of you that have indicated you have interest in taking a tour. So when you leave here, which probably will be the original schedule, look at it just to get my time reference back. You'll go back out towards the interstate, and at the light, you'll turn onto Kia Parkway, follow all the way down to the next light, and you'll turn right into the plant. There's visitor parking on both sides of the main aisle. Pick whatever spot that you wish and go towards the guard shack. You'll be picked up from there. There'll be a trolley that you see like in an amusement park, and then we'll load up on there, and then they'll take you through the facility. So hopefully those of you who haven't seen it or those who want to see it again, maybe it has changed over the last 13 years. That's the plan. Lunch is outside. You sent in each what your preference is, so it's a plated lunch. So please feel free and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and looking forward to the update and also the tour this afternoon. I'll also just in closing, I know our next board meeting, I think it's August 18th is the date of the next board meeting. So I'm not exactly sure. I guess it's to be determined in terms of where or how or. Okay. All right. Excellent. Folks, just want to say just a great meeting, great work. I know that we still have a lot of stuff in store for us here in the future. And whatever the new normal is, I guess we're all going to continue to figure that out together. I know with the pandemic, the dynamics, things continue to change, but one big note is the fact that we've been resilient in this process and we'll continue to evolve. with whatever the situation is. And that's just true to us as Georgians. And so I just want to thank everybody for their hard work and the camaraderie and the support. So with that, if there are no other business, I'll go ahead and officially say our meeting is adjourned.